Hello. Today I'm going to explain how I made this background and these jellyfish from the book Beautiful Planet by Leila Duly. It's the same author of that book, Floribunda and the Flower Year. I don't have these books. In the summer I always try to do seabed pictures. I think what you want most, because in the winter I don't feel like much. And then I'm going to make this background and the jellyfish. And then in the next video, I will do the rest, corals. A few months ago I made a similar tutorial in a book by Johanna Basford, and you can watch the video here on my channel. I'll put the link up here. For this background I will use the Neocolor 2 by Caran. They are like crayons, to which we apply water. I will also use watercolor pencils by Faber-Castell. The use here of these pencils did not go very well. If it were now I wouldn't do it. But I'll explain later what happened and how did I have to fix the problem. I will also use brushes, several brushes. As the design is too small, the brushes are small too. And use several numbers. Later I will explain as I use them. As the design itself has margins, I decided to apply this painter's tape that I see some people use to make the margins and to protect the back of the sheet. Just one more time. If it were today, I wouldn't do it, because in the end when withdrawing, ruined the paper a little. I used to use post-its, and I thought it was a waste to use so many, but it really is the best option, because then it comes off perfectly, without spoiling the paper. How it happened here. The purpose of the tapes is to protect the margins, along with the rest of the drawing, and also prevent the ink from passing through to the other side. Only this ink, as I used very little water, the ink did not rub off on the side of the paper. So I'll start at the background. And I started by applying the watercolor pencil around the jellyfish, on the edges, in the details of jellyfish. This way it is easier after applying the Caran Neocolor, because they are thick and are difficult to apply in the details. It really is much easier to apply with the pencil on the edges of the drawings, and only after applying the water. The color is slightly different, as we will see more next. So here I applied, without great care. Just had some care, not to go over the drawing, but it doesn't take much. In terms of color blending, at layer and everything else, the goal is really just to apply the color in the details. Now they're in the Medusa's little tentacles, is that I later regretted being there so carefully because I ended up in the end. Pass the water over without any care. The tentacles are very thin, and it would have taken a lot less work. Pass the Caran there throughout, and then pass the water. So I ended up wasting a bit of time there, because I later, at the end, I'm going to paint the tentacles. These are thinner, with metallic pen, gel pen, and that's why this step like this. It's completely pointless and a waste of time. And that's how you learn. With experience and with mistakes and with blunders. Now I will start applying the Neocolor 2 by Caran. I use the same color that the watercolor pencils here. First, be careful not to break the pencil, because I already have several parties. I had to stick it with tape afterwards. While they are so big, so it's almost as big as there is. Because they are really like that, little things. They have a tendency to break in half if we don't hold it carefully. So some care is needed when holding them so they don't break in half. Then it spreads the color as needed. Where we want a little more vivid color, we pass the pencil more than once. But it's a matter of putting it on without taking great care. It is not possible to do the thing in great detail. Here with these pencils that are very thick, will not be sharpening, I think, because it's a waste. They are expensive things and not worth sharpening. And losing pigment. So go put it as you think. Then it seems something very ugly right now. But after applying the water, it stays a completely different thing. Here you can already see that despite the name of the color, from Faber-Castell watercolor pencils, and of these Caran be exactly the same, the Prussian blue, the fact is that Canada turns out to be much darker. And this later when I apply the water, it will be noticed. And then if I were to do this again, I would probably just apply the Caran because I wanted a dark seabed background. Dark blue. And then with the brush carefully, drew the color closer to the drawings, to make everything the same color. Now, the way I did, those edges got lighter. And then it ends. Don't look too good the way I do. I wanted the drawing. Here one more time. It would have been so much easier, in those tiny tentacles, if I had passed the Caran pencil just like that. And because I'm going like I said, end up passing the brush all over, without being careful with tentacles to get better. Here I am, speeding up the video a little bit. Some people say that my videos are very fast, that I usually put everything very quickly. And then I tried, at the beginning of the application of each technique, use real time, so very slowly. Only if I put the whole video in real time, I had a whole day to do this background and these jellyfish. A day when I didn't leave my desk. And therefore, it is impossible to make a video in real time, in which you explain everything correctly. Then I explain the beginning of the technique, and then hit speed up so the video doesn't last 24 hours, or 10 o'clock, which is what I've been doing with this background and the jellyfish. Applying water now. Therefore, here I am again in real time. The main rule for this is to apply as little water as possible. Go later adding as needed. But try as much as possible to use little water. Because if we use a lot of water, we'll end up ruining the paper. Paper in this book is thick. It's not as thick as, for example, from Johanna Basford's books. But it's not watercolor paper. So some care is needed. With the use of water, I use very little. Did not damage the paper in the least, but if I had used a lot of water, had probably messed up the paper. Another thing I also use are these brushes. Normal sayings. There are those brushes with deposit, which I don't find very practical. Because I think with these normal brushes I have more control about the amount of water I use. And as you can see, every time I dip the brush in water, I pass on a paper napkin. To remove a little excess water that has, I will try to do this process, so as not to have too much water in the brush. And this is a work of patience, is to add it to the water, passing the brush. Use a finer brush on the details, a thicker brush in the larger zones, and try to make things more or less uniform. Of course, this is not completely uniform. I'm not an artist. I don't have any technique. Is to put it there as it comes, but it's also the bottom of the sea. The bottom of the sea is not like the blue sky. The bottom of the sea is supposed to have waves and such, and therefore also not staying very uniform. It's the sea, the bottom of the sea, and then at the end I will too, so put a few things to pretend that are waves and sheep, as they say here in my land, and then disguise like this some details that are less good. Here you start to notice that next to the drawings, the blue is a little lighter. Then in the places where I applied the Caran precisely because, as I was saying earlier, Faber-Castell pencils end up having a slightly lighter color. The type of material is different, so the color is lighter, despite the color having the same name. Those from Faber-Castell are lighter. If I were to do it again, would have done everything with the Caran. Here I am already giving up the thin tentacles. Not worth it. Work, let's go. These details are better like this. Very small. If we pass everything evenly over. As you can see, the paper is flawless. From behind, did not bleed, didn't go to the other side, did not wrinkle. It's impeccable because I used a little amount water. Now I've been exploring too. Other video editing options. I can now report. Therefore I am reporting. Already after having completed the work. And then I can automatically add subtitles. And I can also automatically do the translation to English. Therefore the video is also available in English. Turns out to be easier for people to watch. Why only have subtitles in English or Portuguese? Or there are people who don't like to read subtitles. They prefer to listen, and that way everyone is happy. Although we are talking about the bottom of the sea, the background is not as uniform as I would like. So I'm going to use Faber-Castell's soft pastels. I will go over the background color. I'm going to use that darker blue, which I think is the same color pencil reference. I will use cotton buds for the details, and also those makeup cotton pads for the larger zones. So I start by putting the pigment on the cotton. Just scrape there a little, and it's soon. With a lot of pigment. There are people who do otherwise. But since a drawing that you already have is a thing, something applied, I prefer to do it like this. So go carefully. Without loading too much and adding color to the sites that I thought were clearer, that were less uniform. To correct this background a bit, and get a little better. For the details. Then use cotton swab, scrape there a little too, and then apply the pigment to the site. Wherever you want, in the smallest places. Even so, with this application of soft pastels, the background didn't turn out the way I wanted. Then later, I will show another way that I used to fix, which was with colored pencils, even Polychromos, to correct some details. I also think they didn't turn out very well. When we use soft pastels, in the end we always have to use a fixative. I put these sheets. The fixer will not damage the paper in the least, and it won't stop after painting over it, but it doesn't hurt to protect. I also have to protect ahead. That I always have my computer in front of me when I'm painting, so you really need to protect. Some people use hairspray. I already used. Ends up doing almost the same effect as the spray that I will use from Paris, which is a fixative suitable for soft pastels. Lay a little on top without exaggerating. Don't soak the paper. And then for a few minutes, don't touch the paper. Don't touch. Don't close the book to let it dry very well. Starting now then with the first Medusa. I am now using Faber-Castell pencils, the Polychromos, which are my favorites by far. And it's here on the screen, the colors I am using. I always start with the darkest color. In the use of Faber-Castell, layering is essential. Go on putting thin layers. But when I know I really want a dark color, I won't need to mix it with any other color. I can carry the pencil and get the job done. Why stay soon? Very pigmented. And I end up saving a bit of work. I already know what I want. There is the darkest part. The shadow part. I want it to get darker. And therefore I can press the pencil. When after, I go for the colors a little lighter. And that I want them to mix with the following colors, especially when they are different colors, as we will see next. That I mix blue with pink. Then you have to be very careful, making layers, very thin layers, very light, so the color blends easily and with these pencils. Taking care, the colors really blend together very easily. The secret to jellyfish's glow is to leave areas blank. I'll come back to the next part later. These dark lines that you see in the drawing itself. But the more parts of the drawing, clear and white, we have, in contrast to the dark colors, brighter will appear, brighter it will look. And as you saw in the image at the beginning of the video, the jellyfish became very bright. It's no photography trick. It's no trick, nothing special. Is simply leaving parts of the blank drawing in contrast with the darkest parts. Now here begins the funniest part, in my opinion. Add ink at the end. The pens at the end, I think, is the funniest part. Why and when? Everything becomes much more alive. Here I am using the Uniball Signo. I started by using pink, and then I'm going to use purple. But then in the end, I regretted it and switched everything to pink. And then I used white. The tentacles. As I said, I had passed. Then paint all over it. And now just pass the pen. And they are there, very visible. You can see very well. So I used purple, but then I regretted it. Because I think it gets too dark. It gets more beautiful. The color that is lighter pink in contrast, with the dark blue behind. Patiently go covering all the dark lines. How much more? Covers have. In a lighter color, the brightness of the drawing will be greater. In this case, the jellyfish. And it seems that you can see. She gaining shine as I'll pass the pen. At the end I used the white-colored pencil. And also the lightest blue. That had to give it an extra shine. In the margins of the drawing. Nonetheless, I'm going to stop the recording and I'm going to paint the third jellyfish. Without filming to be better. faster. Not to be worried about filming. I'm going to paint it the same way I painted this one. And then come back to paint. The one in the middle is different. In the meantime, I've been correcting the background. I used Polychromos colored pencils, the same color that I had used in the watercolor pencil, to reinforce some areas there that were a little lighter than I wanted. I leave it the same. The zones right next to the drawing, clearer. But then the rest I tried in a general way. Go uniforming the background with the darkest color. And here I am adding the white color again, the pen, because it's the cutest part of the drawing. Comes to life completely as it goes. Adding this color. Ending this. I will paint the jellyfish in the middle with the same colors. But it will be in really fast speed. I filmed in time lapse. For the video not to have much time, otherwise there would be the video. It was going to take several hours, and it couldn't be. finishing some extra tentacles with the color blue. In the next video I will paint the corals. I hope you enjoyed, and see you soon. Thanks.